Fake people are everywhere.
167,000 applications. Real is not real anymore right now, and AI is playing a big part on that.
This is identity theft. I'm thinking back to 2019 this week, and the pandemic hits and everyone goes to work from home.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've had some efforts made of return to office, but a lot of companies are still remote. So the remote worker is born as a concept that we didn't really have before, better or for worse. Then comes AI, and AI allows you to do a lot more work more quickly, more efficiently. You've got to imagine that these two pieces are going to work together to create some kind of a dynamic.
As we see every day.
As we see every day, if it's possible, someone will do it. So what this is actually called is called being overemployed. Now, I don't have that problem, do you?
I have a lot of things to do. Am I making the amount of money that I should be making with the amount of work I'm doing? Never enough.
No, that's, I think, what everybody thinks right now. Unless they're doing this little hack that 1 in 5 Gen Z men is doing. A recent study showed that 1 in 8 Gen Zers and 1 in 5 Gen Z men are holding multiple full-time jobs. And 75% of those Gen Zers are using AI to juggle it. They send their meeting note taker to the meeting. They summarize it. They write the emails. They build the reports. They're able to do 3 jobs in the time of 1. And, it's just a fact.
Okay, yeah, but let me put another perspective here, right? Because it's easy to say, oh, these Zoomers, and trust me, I got a lot to say about Zoomers, their podcast preferences, especially Zoomer men. But having said this, if I'm fair, I also have to think we live in an economy, like us as millennials, we at least got to experience cheap Ubers, we did have some sort of subsidy, but they got the worst end of the economy. They have all these gig economy jobs, so they do need to juggle things because otherwise they're not able to afford rent. If they're lucky, because also you got all the other people that it's working on a full-time job, but then they were the ones that survived the layoff, and now it's congratulations, you're doing everyone's job for the same price, and they find themselves completely overloaded. So there, I see 2 cases where I can understand how you're going to look for AI efficiencies, which corporate America loves. So I'm like, what's the issue here?
I'm definitely not blaming these workers because it's really hard to cobble together a livable wage in today's world. And, people are buying houses later in life and they're having families later in life because they just can't simply afford to do it in today's world. So I don't think it's actually a worker issue. I think it's a workplace issue where we're creating these places where you could have 3 jobs and never get noticed. That's kind of a problem. It's not like these people are cheating. It's just that they're taking advantage of the circumstances set before them. And honestly, power to them.
I'm not going to hate on anyone leveraging the tools that their company is asking them to use, because if anything, I'll say you guys are all doing an excellent job. Keep on keeping on. But the question that now comes to my mind, because I always like to go for the bad scenario of this, is okay, if AI can do your job, I'm sure that it can do it more in the workplace. And this is when I remember this story, which was everywhere. It was this guy in Hong Kong. I think it happened early 2024. And Arup, ARUP, finance worker.
Oh, I remember this one.
He gets an email, right? He gets wire instructions to wire some money. So very thoughtful. It's you folks are not getting me. Again, spam. So he's no. We need to double check this. So he gets on a call with the CFO and several senior colleagues. They're all there. They're all looking that they usually do. They're all talking like they usually do.
Send the money.
So he sent, I think, 200 million Hong Kong dollars, which is equivalent of $25 million in multiple transfers. And as it turns out, they were all deepfakes. This was a scam, and it took forever before anyone realized. By the point they figured out, they had already spent $25 million. So a very effective use case for AI. But again, right, he verified. He did what we all say, trust but verify. This person went ahead and did that. But now the little scenario this person was not counting on, and, to be frank, none of us is real is not real anymore right now. And AI is playing a big part on that.
There's all sorts of people using this technology for nefarious end uses, right? I mean, there's like, you could read about scams where people are posing as your grandparent, right? And like, please help me. And it does pull on our heartstrings the way that you can spot a good scam is if it pulls on your heartstrings. Now, this one is incredible because I don't think anyone was expecting deep fake faces, but I hope today they are, because there are deep fakes happening a lot of places, and sometimes they're really bad, and it's really shocking that people believe them. But if you're not expecting to see something like that, you wouldn't know.
And again, it's very easy to say, like, oh, how couldn't you tell? But the truth is, it's just a matter of time before we all get to a position in which something we're not aware is going to pull one on us, right? There's this story, you know, I'm going to bring it back. I love also connecting our episodes with each other. And I don't know if you remember how just a week ago we discussed Workday and how complicated it gets to apply and get a job. Now, surprisingly, I'm going to tell you a story about folks that do not have an issue getting work online applying. So they're having better luck than a lot of people that is probably watching going, like, how did they manage, right? And there are many organizations all over the world pulling this one. So while we're going to mention certain countries, they're not the only ones doing it. It's probably happening here as well. Part of it is happening here in the US. So one of the organizations that it's sort of like exploiting this whole AI automated everything hiring, it's a North Korean IT worker group, right? It's government-backed, allegedly. We don't know for sure, but allegedly is government-backed. They run it like a company, and to be honest, I'm kind of jealous that they get a company like that where everything runs smoothly. They have roles like project managers. They have external facilitators, like a local resource here in the US. They have KPIs. It's insane. Like, they're running it literally better than many corporations. Like, it's incredible, right? And it's only 22 people. So I want everyone to remember, we're talking about 22 people. Literally a football game, 2 teams. What they did actually is during 10 months, right? From December 2024 to September 2025, they put about 167,000 applications, which resulted in almost 22,000 interviews, which landed, and this is kind of depressing, 76 job offers. So just see the amount of times you need to apply, even as a North Korean hacker, to get a job. This is kind of like the slap in the face of all of this. It's like, look at the amount of times they had to apply to get 76 jobs. And what they do is they track everything in Discord. They have a leadership board ranking who's applying the most. So sort of like a meta tactic here, but instead of using it as, where are you applying?
Token maxing. Application maxing.
They have a channel called Horror, in which they log in every failed interview so they can learn from it. So they're doing postmortems as well. The scale goes beyond that, right? The FBI says that there's thousands of these teams. They're like scamming $100 million a year. This is only going to keep on growing and funneling money to regimes that might not be aligned with the interests of, you know, the land of the free, where we're so lucky to live. But there's a human cost as well. And I know you have a case that really hit you.
And it's so interesting with these hackers getting these jobs. It's like, when you think of a hacker, you think of them breaking in somewhere and stealing something. And that's probably part of what this is. In fact, whenever they decide to turn that switch on, they can have access to lots of data and lots of money. But it's just like so ironic that just like even the salaries alone from these jobs is like a good way to pay the bills for this organization. And then I guess they're sending money to the North Korean government for God knows what purpose. But they need, and you mentioned it at the top, they need a local facilitator in the US, because there's one problem with this. You cannot send a laptop to Pyongyang.
You got actually a great point here, Kate. Let's explain for the people that maybe it's not familiar with the process, at least here in the US, because they're watching from another country. When you work remote from a company, what they'll usually do, I do it with some of my clients, they ship you a laptop to your place. It's a laptop that you use only for that client, usually with a VPN, etc., for security. And you do that client-specific work on your US address. That's how it works.
Right. That's how it works. And so that's the one piece of this that has to be on U.S. soil. And so they find U.S. citizens and take their identities and use their identities to apply for these jobs. And it's really funny when you see some of the deep fakes that they use to try to appear like these people. We'll link to the Wall Street Journal special on it here in the notes because it is so good. But it's actually really sad because this is identity theft.
Mm-hmm.
So these people then, when they go apply for a car loan or apply for a home loan or apply for assistance from the government, right? Apply for unemployment, they've shown to be scamming the system. They have like 15 jobs in 6 different states. They look like a criminal on paper. And so it's really hard for them to peel that back, whether wittingly or not. There are people getting caught up in the system for identity theft, which is like the thing you really don't want to happen to you. Like, it's awful if you've ever known someone who's had that happen.
And I imagine when you say, you have all these jobs showing up under your name, also you will have to pay taxes on it. I imagine the U.S. government is going to say, hey, it's saying here that you made $1 million this year. Where's our cut? If you think about it, and I'm not saying that happened, right? But I'm like off the top of my head. I'm so like, if there's anything that you will be prosecuted if you're a normal person and not rich here, it's not paying your taxes. So I imagine if you're owning for $1 million in profit, maybe on revenue, that's another problem to add to all the other problems. I think in the case, there was this guy, Michael Brown, that he found out that his identity had been stolen because he was going to apply for unemployment. And then they were like, what do you mean unemployment? You have 11 different jobs.
It's like crazy.
Which also should be
it's not funny. It's awful. Yeah. But just think of the irony. Getting a job right now can be a very difficult task, as we have covered in episodes, and as these numbers of like 200,000 applications leads to 70-something jobs, right? I mean, it just really funnels you down. It's hard to get a good paying job right now. And all these jobs that are being taken by foreign actors are jobs that are not going to U.S. citizens in this country and in other countries around the world. The note here is hire directly. Don't hire a third-party staffing firm unless you can absolutely verify all the potential hires they're bringing you.
And speaking of verification, the next thing, that people might want to know here is like, okay, but how do you build the thing, right? How do we go from like, I stole your identity because you got on a shady website, because I sent you a phishing email, whichever way your identity got stolen, which there are so many ways nowadays, right? Yeah. What they do is, let's say, and this is a process for educational purposes. I'm not going to go too into detail. Let's do the high level.
Please don't.
How do you build a fake worker? Basically, you steal a social security number, which is this very important number in the United States. Don't do it, right? This is how they would do it. The bad people. So they steal this social security number from whoever they feel, usually folks who will not have the resources to fight back. And then they do an AI generated face, or they hijack a LinkedIn account that it's already from a real person. So the level of sophistication, right? It's not only they steal the social security numbers, they'll have a social media profile. There's a whole fake person built. And then when they take the interview, ChatGPT or whatever LLM they use is feeding them answers. So they'll be thoughtful for a minute. And this Wall Street Journal documentary was showing that, right? Like they take a second. And then the facilitator, which is this US Accomplice that you would say, they get the laptop, right? If they get the job, they get the laptop shipped to their house, plugs it in, and
they get a cut.
Remotely, it goes overseas and they get a cut. Obviously, they might get into a lot of trouble later, but they do get a cut.
Yeah, fake people are everywhere. I read a stat that LinkedIn alone, it blocks like 80 million fake accounts a year when people try to set them up, and they're very good at it. They, have the profile picture that looks real and the resume that looks real and even comments from other people. I really liked working with this person. You have to really pay attention and verify and double verify and triple verify if you are being reached out to by somebody cold, because there really are a lot of like phishing. They're now just not even phishing scams. They're like phishing people, like phishing influencers who are there to trick you into doing whatever that thing is, giving them your email, giving them your data and information.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it just takes a Google search to see the amount of people getting scammed, people that have lost all their savings, or like we were saying before, they're going to have a big issue without necessarily having done anything on their own to deserve that. Now, it's kind of like what we say when AI, they say end-to-end AI, right? Like you apply and an AI platform covers everything, and then you get an AI recruiter doing the interview. This is the side effect, right? When we talk about AI efficiencies, this is like, okay, you take a medication, but it's going to come with a side effect. And I think here, the conversation has never focused on these side effects. It was always thinking about the best case scenario, which unfortunately happens a lot, but there's no conversation about, okay, let's think about what could go wrong here before we implement.
You hear the expression human in the loop. If you have an application process that is AI driven and then a hiring process is AI driven and there is no connective tissue from a human being who can tell the difference between a scam or not in between, you're setting yourself up for disaster. I think what really is concerning now is that even when that human layer is in the process, they too are being fooled by some of this stuff.
And I have a question that I have no answer for. So actually the thing I'm going to say is, I don't know if a question for the audience, if they want to chime in the comments, I want to see how you feel, right? Because the first thing I think it's like, so how do you verify identity, right? Which is a big conversation right now. Should we all upload our personal identification to social media platforms and provide them with even more sensitive information they can either monetize or can be leaked? I don't feel comfortable like that. I don't want to have to prove I'm a human. I feel very strongly about that. I understand there's some benefits, but to me, the downside, it's something that I don't feel comfortable with. And whichever platform says you got to upload your ID, I'm like, peace out, unless it's a bank, right? Which makes more sense. How do you feel about this, actually, Kate? I want to know how you feel.
There are tools out there that can help you spot some of this stuff. I think one of the most popular one is called Pangram, but there are others. Grammarly also has gotten into that space as well because they realized that they needed to go somewhere. They're there to detect when AI is answering some of those interview questions. So for example, if you're sitting in front of a computer and you ask the question and it takes them a minute to respond and they say, yeah, and then they give you a very canned response that sounds red, that means that they're using AI to answer the question. And some of these detectors can see that and help patch that gap in our human insight for you. Same thing with resumes, same thing with written copy, the same thing in universities where people are trying to tell what papers have been faked. And so companies who are concerned that they might have some folks like this working inside of their organization should probably deploy one of these types of tactics in the interview process. Amazon said that they have found applicants who were found to be foreign actors and have gotten rid of them. They fired them and informed the agency that supplied that connect. But, I think it really is kind of like a whack-a-mole strategy right now. You never know what's going to crop up.
It's exactly that. And I do think when we say AI creating new jobs, I see the industry of verification, companies that do this digital sleuthing, etc. That's going to be a big business because there's going to be a need for this, right? So at least from my end, I wish I had a better answer on how to solve this. Yeah. One of the many challenges of a successful AI implementation is going to be figuring out the downside of automating everything and how we place trust, right? Like, how are we going to do to trust anything? Are we going to in person and there are no more remote workers? I don't know. So I want to hear everyone's theories in the comments because I'm out of them.
Hire local, shake the person's hand. It'll be good. I mean, there's tons of tech employees or any kind of employees in any sort of metropolitan area. You don't necessarily have to hire someone from 10 states away or another country. In fact, it might be a good idea to have a more community-oriented focus to your business like you and I have and be rooted in a place as opposed to a global interconnected virtual company. I don't know. Just one idea.
Kate, I try to be business friendly here and you come with all these worker community friendly speeches. Like, that's Kate speaking, right? I'm like, optimize everything. Adapt. Speaking of companies where employees are super happy to go every day and implement AI on their daily lives, we have an episode on Meta and how they have been tracking AI usage and many different use cases in the organization, not necessarily great ones, but if you're interested in AI and hiring and how it affects work, that's definitely an episode that you want to check up here. And as usual, we want to read your comments. They will be going live on Wednesday. Subscribe, like. Kate loves you. I'm pretty okay with all of you. See you next week.